All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions and then I'm going to throw it out to the audience.
Sure.
So I just wanted to start, in the obvious place. I know that this started as a story that you did for Audible, and then it became this, and I was just wondering how.
Yeah. Yeah, just like any movie, it starts as an Audible original. Yeah, no, I actually, so this was like in 2017, I started writing like a series of monologues from a character who's like, from a father who couldn't connect to his newborn baby, because I just had a baby, and I, fell in love with my child immediately, but I had heard a story of somebody who had no connection. I thought, my God, that's horrifying. What does that feel like? So I started writing like a series of monologues from a character like that, and then I was thinking about turning it into like kind of a one-man show that I was actually going to do across the street at Minetta Lane, at the Audible Theater. After I finished that piece, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to like see it from the kids' perspective, like jump in the future, because it's all audio, so it'd be interesting to like have monologues from the kids' perspective. That meant setting it in like the year 2032, because it's 2017, I was setting it in the future. And so I started writing like about the future, like from this 17-year-old kid's perspective, and I thought he would, if he was a capitalist kind of kid, like this kid you just saw in the movie, kind of the shallow, kind of like, like ambitious kid, then he would make money online in this program where it allows you to like, only, I realize now that you could do that now, but at the time I thought like, this is brilliant, and this is probably 15 years off, and it turns out it's now, and it's the past. So, but anyway, so I started writing from that perspective, and then, sorry, just I'll make this brief. And then after I finished that kid's perspective, I thought, well, we haven't heard from the mom. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to set it in like the past, in 2002, like 30 years past, and it's on the campus of Indiana University, where this young woman who grew up in rural Indiana, her boyfriend, who she's in love with, gets, he enlists in the army, because it's, after 9/11, and she is on this very liberal campus that's opposed to the war in every way, and she's having like a political and existential crisis, and she starts volunteering at a domestic violence shelter. So there you have like the three characters. And then after I finished the Audible thing, I was looking for another play to write, because that's my background is in playwriting, as a writer is in playwriting, and I was thinking about what this story could be, and I love the idea of a mother and a son who have different values. She's this social activist, a world I know well through my wife, and he's this kind of shallow entrepreneur, a world I know well through myself. And I thought it'd be such an interesting thing. And as I was writing it as a play, I was like, it was taking place in more than one room and had all these props. And I thought, okay, this maybe is an opportunity to make a movie that could be unusual and that I could actually accomplish with my limited skill set.
Well, I thought you accomplished it really well.
Thanks.
I watched that film and I was so moved and like also stressed. As like I watched this movie and like I had just become a parent. And there was something that was so like there was such a push and a pull between both characters. The way that they were both kind of uniquely arrogant in their own way, like the son being like, I've got like all these followers and I am so successful. Yeah. And then the mom being like, I have such a, like, I'm so good. Like, you should care about the things that I care about. But also, and that was like a little bit like frustrating and also and stressful in that like, you should talk to each other, you should, whatever. But also, they are both so sympathetic because they are trying so hard.
Yeah.
And they're trying so hard to connect. And I was just wondering how like conscious you were of that dichotomy in these characters and how like rounded they are.
Well, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. And I feel, the same way as you're expressing, that's how I felt, doing it. And for that reason, like, they're so like kind of successful in their own like separate elements. Like she runs this shelter and she is revered and and she's doing objectively amazing work. And he alternatively is doing like shallow work, but he's very successful in his field. And when he's online, he's like he's a god to these people. And they can't like connect to each other. And I you just think of like how awful it must be to like be very successful in one area, and yet the person who, you know, is living in the next room over has no appreciation for what you do, and how heartbreaking that must be, and impossible to kind of reconcile, and impossible to like appreciate yourself and the work you do if like the person closest to you can't see the value in it. And so I thought, okay, this is all valuable for making a story, you know, and stuff I'm interested in. And so they seek out these other people, like the boy seeks out this young woman who is like a kind of carbon copy of his mother, like who she's like political and he wants to learn about politics. But you really know he just should be asking his mom, like the person is right up there. And then she, you know, starts like unconsciously feeling parental and maternal to this kid at the shelter who has a good mom, like who has a person who's been through hell, but is like a stable parent, and they clearly have like a good relationship, him and his mom, that is. And so, yeah, you just see like, you know, and I don't know, I feel like people do this, like try to kind of replace, you know, a relationship that's not working, and instead of working on the thing, you try to replace what that person is providing for you in somebody else who seems like a blank slate, and, you know, you could impose everything that you want on the person who you're not connecting with onto this new person. And of course, that's not good for either the vehicle or the person you're neglecting.
Yeah, and it made such a moving film. And I just wanted to ask one last question before I take it out to the audience.
Please.
And I wanted to ask about the music. Obviously, the character Ziggy, he's a musician, and there's great music throughout the film. There's the music that he writes, which is like actually like, you know, it's there's something to it. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
The character's, you know, working on it.
Yeah.
And then there's also the score, which is really great,
yeah.
And then that really amazing Pete Seeger song at the end, which is great. So I just wanted to ask about how you conceptualize the music in the film.
Well, okay, yeah, well, thank you very much. And just like in a moment of embarrassing candor, I will say that my secret desire as a person in the arts is just to write musical theater. And I've written musicals, and none of them have gotten made, and only a few of them have gotten seen by backers who backed out of the room. And so I thought, okay, here's my opportunity to have my music in a global scale, you know, for a movie. And so I had written all these songs, the songs you hear in the movie, but with different melodies, my great melodies. And so, and I sent them to the producers, who said, listen, these are okay, but maybe just meet with a few composers just to see if you hit it off. So I met with this guy, Emil Mosseri, and you are obviously very film savvy people, so you would know Emil. Other people don't, but his first movie was Last Black Man in San Francisco. He did Kajillionaire, and then he did Minari, where he got nominated for an Oscar. He's just like, you know, he's a genius. You know, he's so wonderful and specific. And so Emil was very sweet when I told him I wrote all the music and you don't have to do anything. And then he said, and then I sent it to him, and he said, these sound like really good if you're like kind of a teenage musical theater geek. And I was like, I am. That's it. You've hit it on the head. And so he rewrote the melodies. There are a few songs in there that are not like very good, like you kind of indicated very sweetly, and those are my melodies.
Like there's something there. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's like as good as like I am as 39-year-old person working my hardest. So this is a guy who's 17, that's me at 39 is 17-year-old laughable.
Somebody please save me. Does anybody have a question?
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering about the final part of the film where we see the vlog from Finn Wolfhard.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've seen that video before, and I was wondering, like, no? That was
No.
Okay, so...
Yes.
At what point was that...
And that is the most interesting part of this movie that I had nothing to do with, which is just that, like, so at the end you see...
Just really quickly,
Yeah.
let me
I was going to
rephrase
say,
the question.
please.
Yeah. The question was about the final vlog at the end of the movie.
Yeah, so at the end you see Finn at 10 years old, and it's Finn, saying, this is the real Ziggy Katz, thanks for tuning in. So that was a deep fake. So the way it happened was we like toyed with 1,000 different endings on the computer screen. And then, so one of the producers is Dave McCary. He directed like Saturday Night Live shorts for like 10 years. So he's like very into new technology and kind of like quirky technology that you can use to kind of create something, you know, that's not traditional like the rest of the movie is. And so there were these Belgian brothers who did this Tom Cruise deepfake, where there was a guy and he looked like Tom Cruise and he put a hat on and everything, and that was, these Belgian brothers made this. And so we called them and said, hey, could you make a deep fake? I asked Finn, Finn, the actor, I said, do you have like a video from when you were 10? Can you send me something? And he rustled up these videos. That video that you saw that you thought you saw actually never aired on anything. He just like made it as like a practice run for like if he did that kind of thing. And so he sent me this video. It was like a 7-minute video of him saying, I'm gonna sing some songs on my new vlog. And he's like, insanely adorable. And so we sent it to this Belgian company. They imported the 7-minute clip, and then they asked me, say the dialogue that you want him to say. So I recorded me saying, this is the real Ziggy Katz, thanks for tuning in. They then deep faked that from that 7-minute clip, that creature of 10-year-old Finn saying that to my voice. And then we had to audition boys to sound like Finn so that we can do a voiceover so they can replace my voice. So, because you can't deep fake voice, apparently it doesn't sound as good, which is weird, but so we auditioned boys to sound like a 10-year-old Finn Wolfhard and had them come in and record the thing. So like this is like a 16mm like homemade indie from A24, and yet at the end there's like a little bit of Batman. Thank you for your astute observation. That's unusual. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Since this was your first time directing and you'd been in front of the camera so many times, what was that like working with actors, and what was the most sort of unexpected thing that you found as a director?
The question was about working with actors for the first time as an actor yourself, and what was surprising about that?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. I have spent 20 years on movie sets, and I'm pacing around every set, kind of worried that I'm not doing a good job, and also trying to stay in the mode of the scene, and if it's a stressful or emotional scene, I'm kind of living in that hard, this feeling or whatever. And I never had an appreciation for that, because I always think of acting, just because I'm self-flagellating person, I always think of acting as it's a vanity pursuit. And I don't have as much appreciation because I do it, and so I'm kind of just self-punishing. And then when I was on the set and I was watching Julianne Moore, she was walking around that office where she has where she works, and she was before a scene and she's rubbing her head and she's stressed out. And I remember having this thought of what an amazing gift that this woman is exposing herself publicly, emoting. And yes, of course, there's a vanity to it because we're known and on posters and everything. But on the other hand, it's this really amazing thing that she's doing. And God, I have such appreciation. I walked up to her and said, this is such a beautiful gift that you're giving. This is so nice. I wanted to tell this story to connect to people, and it's the thing I like to do. And you're doing this very kind of provocative, exposing thing, and how beautiful that is. And only after the movie was done did I realize oh, maybe I could feel that way a little bit more about myself. Not that I have to self-congratulate or anything, just the idea of oh, maybe the thing I do is the stress that I put myself under and the bad feelings and the sleepless nights and all that stuff, maybe it has some value that I can learn to live with a little more comfortably.
Any other questions? Right there in the back.
I was wondering if you talk about the local community you filmed in, just the town and where it is really.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, the question is about the local community and where the film was set.
Yes, so again, I know you're a very film-savvy audience, so I can speak to the specifics of basically choosing a location, which just depends on, it's primarily driven by tax incentives now. So we were in New Mexico, which has this incredible tax incentive, which means if you don't know, for every dollar you spend in New Mexico, you get a 35% tax rebate or something, and it differs by state. So, so the movie takes place in Indiana. Indiana, is a very conservative state government. They don't offer tax incentives to the heathenist film companies that come there. And so we're looking, okay, what can look like Indiana, and what can we shoot in January, which is freezing and in a lot of these places that offer these tax incentives. So the first place we were looking was Winnipeg, because we were going to shoot in September. The movie pushed till January. We couldn't shoot in Winnipeg anymore. Winnipeg offers an amazing tax incentive and looks credibly like Midwest America. There's thousands of streets that could be credibly Midwestern America, if it's generic enough and not specific to Indiana. And then we lost Winnipeg because it was freezing, and so we went to New Mexico, and New Mexico is the most beautiful place on earth and the least Indiana in the world. There's 3 streets in Albuquerque where we were shooting, which again is the most beautiful natural landscape on the planet, but there's 3 streets that can be Midwest Americana. And of course, everything that goes there shoots on these 3 streets, and the people who live there know that, how to get, how to basically make sure that they know the film thing. So you can't you can't like take advantage of like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we're actually gonna be another hour. Like they know they don't like it. So you're on these 3 streets, and you know the 3 streets are gorgeous, but it just limits what you can do. While we were there, like Netflix said they're gonna like build $1 billion studio there, and I was just thinking these 3 streets are no longer gonna be these 3 streets. Like they're gonna be inundated with this, and you feel bad because you know you're shooting overnight and taking over their sweet suburban place. But on the other hand, it was like beautiful. Like, you know, the crew is amazing because they shoot so much there. So you get these incredible crews, people that leave LA because they're sick of LA and they're going to Atlanta or New Mexico because it's a nicer life. They're not like surrounded by the film industry and they could do their jobs on good films. And then we had like local casting. So like we had like, you know, indigenous American actors in this because the local community, there's a big local, you know, indigenous community there. So we had these incredible actors who, if we were shooting in, you know, New York, we might not have seen or something, or maybe to that extent. So that's the other thing. You kind of embrace what's there, and we got lucky in so many ways too. You know, we had the best dolly grip in the country because he settled in New Mexico and he just finished the Tom Hanks movie, The News of the World, and he's like one of the greatest, you know, so that's the other thing. You take advantage of the fact that there's not as many there as there would be here or LA. Thank you.
There you go.
I was just wondering if you could speak to how much of the film changed in post-production, like, because you write so much in theater where it's on one stage, and you're watching it, and everything, you know, it's different. Like you said, it's different props, different locations.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you could talk about how it changed, like in the editing room, if it stayed kind of similar to how it was written, or if it was like a massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the question was about post-production and what that experience was like, you know, as a director, since usually you do theater where there is no post-production.
Yeah, it's really strange. So, and you were also asking just specifically, like, had things changed a lot? And the weird thing is, so when you have like a movie, you know, I don't think anybody, this has not been my experience before, because in theater, like the script is like this kind of like Bible and no one changes a word and everything. And in film, you know, there's a huge company, a very smart company, A24, paying for it, and there are, you know, actors involved, and there are actors' agents involved, and there are, you know, and I don't think everybody looks at the movie like a living thing. You know, I didn't, because like I had this specific thing I wanted to do. But you're surrounded by people who look at it as this living thing. And my editor, Sarah Shaw, she's amazing. She had been called in to like save a few movies, which is like a movie that the studio is feeling like this is not working, and they hire her and she comes in and fixes it. So her background too is like, what can we do here? How can we mix things up? And it was the opposite to mine. And it was interesting to work, but also quite taxing to me, because I walked home every day thinking, this must not be working. This must be terrible if we're talking about these massive changes. Like, you know, what if we introduce her later? You know, and it's stuff that like, I thought about the movie for, you know, 3 years. So you think that's impossible, you know, and I don't like to think of it as that way, because I feel like if you're starting to do that, then you have a failure. You know, I've been involved in movies where they call you in, you know, after the movie's shot, and they say, oh, we want you to do some voiceover for the movie. And you know it's bad, because if you have to do voiceover, it means things are not clear to an audience, and then you're doing voiceover, and it's never great. It's never like, we thought of this amazing idea to do voiceover and explain the plot to the audience. That's never been done like retroactively in a good way. And so, so I had this feeling like, oh shit, this is not working. It was kind of like, it made me feel kind of like bad every day. Like I would, you know, biking home from the editing place every day, feeling like maybe this is not working. And then, so yeah, but the truth is I didn't do enough coverage for anything to change. So like, I work with a Scandinavian cinematographer. If you've watched any movie from Scandinavia, you'll see there's not a lot of, you know, music video cuts, like, well, sometimes, but, you know, there was a feeling like, let's shoot what we need, let's have this be this kind of like pristine thing, let's have these scenes play out in as long takes as possible. And so like, there wasn't enough footage to really remake something, which is maybe a trick I'll use in the future. It's like, I'm sorry, it's not there. Yeah.
We have time for one last question. Right there. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Nice job, Jesse.
Thank you.
Even though the emotional arc of the film is the mother and the son, I felt that one of the most devastating scenes in the movie is when a father confronts them and says, neither one of you showed up to my, you know, award ceremony.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if you could speak to the character of the father.
Yeah.
And how integral he was to the original, and even though he only had a few scenes, he was such an emotional presence.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thanks, so sweet. I can rephrase. Yeah, you're asking. Thank you. I'll just rephrase. Yeah, just asking about the father's character and the like emotional weight that he has. And yeah, well, I will say also, because we're like a New York audience, like I wrote that part. It was like the only part of the movie that I wrote specifically for this actor, J.O. Sanders, who I've seen in all these Richard Nelson plays. I don't know if anybody's seen these. It's like the greatest things in the world. And so like I wrote that for him, and he has like a funny quality, which is kind of like he can be like aloof, but also very smart. It's like an unusual actor quality that he has. And I kind of had this feeling like these two, like, there are two, like, planets in the house, and he's like a kind of, you know, he's a mere star, you know? So, like, you know, he's a bright guy, and he's an academic, but you have these two, you know, such heavy egos. You know, she, of course, is doing, you know, the Lord's work, and she's, you know, saintly, and the kid is doing more shallow work, but they both have, like, this incredible sense of self. And so I was just thinking, like, you know, just in the nature of, you know, I guess family systems, family dynamics, just that one person kind of retreats, but then he has his big moment and they then show up. And I was just trying to, well, I mean, I was trying as a director or writer, just from like a macro perspective, trying to show like that these people are far more similar to each other than they think, that Ziggy and Evelyn are far more similar than they would imagine or tell other people that they are. So that's what I was trying to indicate through him. The character was like, in the audiobook, it was like a full character that I wrote for myself. So it was like a full character, but then, you know, making a movie, and it's like a two-hander movie, and you don't want to give too much weight to other people because then it gets distracting. But I don't know, maybe I did a bad job because like I was thinking when I was editing, I was like, oh, maybe I should have like given him more. But then it feels like it takes the focus off. I don't know, it's one of the million things I'll kick myself over and never watch the movie again.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming. It's so nice of you to come here. Yeah, really nice of you. Okay, so that's it.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you so much.